I want to make you my special assistant. My name is Liam. I was 41 and had been grinding through 12-hour days at Velthorn Global for 7 years. Senior Operations Analyst, Division 3. I kept the numbers clean, the processes running, and my mouth shut. That was the deal. But sitting in Clarissa Wynn's glass office that Tuesday morning, staring at her predatory smile, I knew something had shifted. She leaned back in her executive chair, fingers drumming against the mahogany desk like she was playing a private game only she understood. It comes with extra duties, she continued, her voice dropping an octave. Discretion, loyalty, you know what I mean. I kept my face neutral. 7 years of corporate survival had taught me to read between the lines, but this wasn't subtle. This was a proposition wrapped in corporate speak, delivered by a woman who thought her corner office gave her the right to treat employees like personal accessories. Clarissa had been promoted to Vice President of Business Strategy 6 months earlier. Fresh blood, they called it. Dynamic leadership. She was 38, sharp as a razor, and had climbed the ladder faster than anyone in company history. The board loved her quarterly projections. The shareholders loved her cost-cutting initiatives. But I had started noticing things. The way she lingered near my desk during morning rounds. How she scheduled our quarterly reviews at upscale restaurants instead of the conference room. Last month, she had invited me to a weekend leadership retreat in Asheville. When I declined, citing family obligations, she had given me a look that could freeze water. Think about it, Liam, she said now, standing and smoothing her skirt. Opportunities like this don't come around often, especially for someone at your level. The pause before level was deliberate, a reminder that I was disposable, replaceable, just another middle management drone who should feel grateful for her attention. I stood up, straightening my tie. I appreciate the offer, but I'll have to decline. Her smile faltered for just a second. Excuse me? I'm here to work, I said. Not for whatever this is. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Clarissa's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the polished executive mask slipped completely. What I saw underneath was raw entitlement mixed with shock. Nobody had ever said no to her before. I see, she said slowly. Well, Liam, maybe you should think carefully about your priorities. This company values team players, ambitious people who understand how business really works. I nodded once and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, she spoke again. Real men know how to seize opportunities. I didn't turn around. I just walked out, closed the door behind me, and went back to my desk. But something cold had settled in my stomach. This wasn't over. I had built my career on precision and reliability. While other guys played office politics or chased promotions through schmoozing, I focused on results. Clean reports, accurate forecasts, zero drama. That approach had served me well at Velthorn Global, a mid-sized logistics company that handled freight distribution across the Southeast. I started as a junior analyst fresh out of college, worked my way up through merit, and earned respect by being the guy who could solve problems without creating new ones. My ex-wife Jennifer used to joke that I was married to spreadsheets instead of her. Maybe she was right. After our divorce 3 years ago, work became even more central to my life. My daughter Chloe lived with her mother in Raleigh, and our weekend visits were the highlight of my week. Everything else revolved around maintaining the stability that supported those moments. The warning signs with Clarissa had been subtle at first, too subtle. It started with comments during team meetings. Liam always has such insightful perspectives, she would say, letting her hand rest on my shoulder just a beat too long. When I presented quarterly efficiency reports, she would sit closer than necessary, her perfume mixing with the recycled air in the conference room. Then came the invitations. Coffee meetings that felt more like dates. A company dinner where she seated me next to her and spent the evening talking about her personal life, instead of business strategies. Last month, she had suggested we attend a trade conference in Atlanta together. When I mentioned that my colleague Derek usually handled those events, she said Derek lacked my special touch. I had started documenting things without really thinking about it. Professional paranoia, maybe. Screenshots of text messages that arrived after business hours. Emails with unusual subject lines. meeting invitations that seemed unnecessarily personal. My gut had been sending signals for weeks, but I had pushed them aside. Clarissa was ambitious and aggressive, sure, but she was also successful. I assumed her behavior was just misguided networking or poor boundary management. Corporate environments could be weird that way. But yesterday changed everything. She had called me into her office to discuss the Henderson account. Normal enough. Except when I arrived, she was wearing a dress that belonged in a nightclub, not a boardroom. The conversation kept drifting away from logistics toward personal topics. Her vacation plans, my weekend activities, whether I was seeing anyone. "You know, Liam," she had said, leaning forward across her desk, "successful partnerships require trust, intimacy, understanding what each other really needs." I had redirected the conversation back to shipping schedules and left as quickly as possible. Now, sitting at my desk after declining her special assistant offer, I realized I had been naive. This wasn't about career advancement or professional development. This was about power and control, dressed up in corporate language. I opened my secure email folder and started reviewing the evidence I had unconsciously been collecting. The pattern was clearer now, and more disturbing than I had imagined. The termination letter arrived 90 minutes later. I was reviewing freight manifests when human resources knocked on my cubicle wall. Sandra from HR looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as she handed me the envelope. "Effective immediately," the letter read. "Due to insubordination and failure to align with company values, your employment with Velthorn Global is terminated. Please gather your personal belongings and report to security for escort from the premises." I read it twice, then looked up at Sandra. She was wringing her hands like she had been ordered to execute a puppy. "This is a mistake," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Liam. It came from executive level. I don't have any details." 5 minutes later, security was standing beside my desk. 2 guards I had seen 100 times in the lobby, now treating me like a criminal. Other employees watched from their workstations, whispering behind hands and computer monitors. I packed my few personal items, a coffee mug, a photo of Chloe, my backup phone charger, while one guard observed and the other filled out paperwork. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. As they escorted me through the lobby, I saw Clarissa standing near the elevator bank. She was talking to another executive, but her eyes were fixed on me. When our gazes met, she smiled. Not friendly, triumphant. "Real men know how to seize opportunities," she had said. Now I understood what she meant. This was punishment for not playing her game, a demonstration of power. Submit or be destroyed. I didn't react, didn't argue or make a scene. I just kept walking until I reached the parking garage, climbed into my Honda, and sat there for 5 minutes, letting reality settle. 7 years of steady employment. Gone. My reputation in the industry. Potentially damaged. My ability to support my daughter. Compromised. All because I had refused to become some executive's personal plaything. But as I drove home through Charlotte traffic, something shifted inside me. The initial shock was fading, replaced by something colder and more focused. Clarissa had made a mistake. She had assumed I was weak, disposable, someone who would slink away quietly and disappear. She was wrong. I had been documenting her behavior for months without even realizing it. Screenshots, email threads, meeting summaries, voice recordings from my phone that I had meant to delete but never got around to cleaning up. Professional habits had turned into an accidental insurance policy. When I got home, I went straight to my home office and opened my encrypted backup drive. Everything was there. Dates, times, witnesses. A pattern of inappropriate behavior that would make any HR department break into a cold sweat. I poured myself a beer, opened my laptop, and started organizing the evidence into a timeline. Clarissa wanted to play power games. Fine. But she had chosen the wrong target. I was about to show her what real precision looked like. I spent the weekend building my case like I was preparing a quarterly report. Methodical, thorough, no emotion, just facts. By Sunday night, I had compiled 6 months of documentation. 37 inappropriate text messages, 14 emails with suggestive language disguised as business communication, audio recordings from 3 meetings where Clarissa had made comments that would make any employment lawyer salivate. The most damning piece was a voice memo from last month. She had called me at home on a Friday evening, ostensibly about the Peterson contract. But 15 minutes into the conversation, after what sounded like her second glass of wine, she had gotten explicit about her expectations for our working relationship. "I take care of people who take care of me, Liam," she had said, her words slightly slurred. "Career advancement, salary bumps, special projects that look great on a resume. All it takes is understanding what I really need from you." I had kept the recording because something in her tone had triggered my paranoia. Now I was grateful for that instinct. Monday morning, I called Velthorn Global's employee hotline and requested a meeting with the compliance department. They scheduled me for Wednesday afternoon with Jessica Barnes, the senior compliance officer. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a folder thick enough to choke a horse. Jessica was professional but guarded. Companies hated wrongful termination claims, especially ones involving sexual harassment allegations. "I understand you have concerns about your recent termination," she said, settling behind her desk. "More than concerns," I replied, sliding the folder across to her. "I have evidence." For the next hour, I walked her through the timeline. The escalating inappropriate behavior. The quid pro quo implications. The retaliation firing when I refused her advances. Jessica took notes, asked clarifying questions, and maintained the neutral expression that HR professionals perfected in law school. But I caught her wincing when I played the audio recording where Clarissa described what she expected from her special assistants. "This is extensive," Jessica said finally. "I'll need to review everything with legal counsel. We'll be in touch within the week." I left feeling cautiously optimistic. The evidence was solid. The company would have to take action. 3 days later, Jessica called with an update that made my blood pressure spike. "After reviewing your materials, we've determined that your termination was justified based on performance issues predating the events you've described," she said in a carefully rehearsed monotone. "While we appreciate your concerns about Mr. Wynn's management style, we found no evidence of policy violations." "Management style?" I repeated. "Did you listen to the recordings?" "We conducted a thorough investigation. Mr. Wynn categorically denied your allegations and provided documentation showing a pattern of insubordination and attitude problems. Several colleagues confirmed that you had been resistant to feedback and difficult to work with." I felt the floor drop out from under me. "What colleagues?" "I can't share specific details, but the consensus was clear. Your termination stands." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the wall. Clarissa hadn't just fired me. She had built a paper trail to justify it, fabricated performance issues, turned my co-workers against me. How many people had she compromised? How deep did this go? I called Derek, my former cubicle neighbor, thinking he might provide some insight. We had worked together for 4 years. He owed me at least honesty. "Look, man," Derek said, his voice strained. "I can't really talk about this. Company policy, you know? But maybe you should just move on. Find something new. Starting fresh might be better for everyone." "Derek, what did she tell you?" Long pause. "Just that you had been having problems, attitude issues, that you made some inappropriate comments about female employees." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, pieces clicking into place. Clarissa hadn't just retaliated against me. She had poisoned the well, made sure that even if I fought back, nobody would believe me. Smart, ruthless. Exactly what I should have expected from someone who had climbed to VP level by 38. But she had made one mistake. She assumed I would give up, that I was just another middle management drone who would slink away quietly rather than risk making waves. She didn't know me as well as she thought. That evening I did something I had never done before. I called a private investigator. Marcus Thompson ran a small firm that specialized in corporate investigations, divorce cases, insurance fraud, employment disputes. His website promised discretion and results. "I need to know who I'm really dealing with," I told him during our initial consultation at a downtown coffee shop. This woman destroyed my career in one afternoon. I want to understand how. Marcus was a former detective, mid-50s, with the patient demeanor of someone who had heard every possible variation of human betrayal. He quoted me a fee that made me wince, but I paid it. This was about more than getting my job back. This was about understanding the scope of what I was facing. "Give me 2 weeks," he said. "I'll see what I can dig up." While Marcus worked his angles, I started my own investigation. Late-night Google searches, LinkedIn deep dives, public records requests. What I found disturbed me more than Clarissa's original proposition. She hadn't been at Velthorn Global very long, but her rise had been meteoric. Hired as a senior manager 18 months ago, promoted to director after 6 months, then VP 6 months after that. Each promotion coincided with the sudden departure of potential rivals. Thomas Reed, the former director of strategic planning, had left for personal reasons right before Clarissa's first promotion. According to his LinkedIn, he was now working for a smaller firm in Jacksonville at what appeared to be a significant pay cut. Patricia Nguyen, who had been considered the frontrunner for the VP position, had resigned to pursue other opportunities 2 weeks before Clarissa was selected. She was currently unemployed. Kevin Walsh, a senior analyst who had been with the company for 12 years, had been terminated for performance issues 3 months ago. His employment gap was still ongoing. The pattern was clear. Clarissa eliminated competition by destroying careers. But the real revelation came when Marcus called with his preliminary findings. "Your boss has been busy," he said. 3 previous employers, similar pattern each time. Rapid advancement followed by a trail of employment disputes and NDAs. NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements. Sealed settlements. I count at least 6 in the past 10 years, always involving male employees, always involving wrongful termination claims that got buried under legal paperwork. Marcus had identified 2 former victims willing to talk off the record. Both told similar stories, inappropriate advances, promises of career advancement in exchange for personal favors, retaliation when they refused. "The scary part," Marcus continued, "is how good she is at covering her tracks. She builds performance issues into their files months before making her move, creates paper trails that justify the terminations. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the legal framework is already in place. How is she getting away with this? Money, power, smart lawyers, and companies that would rather pay settlement fees than deal with public scandals. She picks her targets carefully. Middle management guys with families and mortgages, people who can't afford lengthy legal battles. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, processing the scope of Clarissa's operation. This wasn't just harassment. This was a systematic predator who used corporate structures to hunt and destroy careers. How many men had she victimized? How many families had been damaged? And why was she so confident that she could keep getting away with it? The answer came to me as I was drifting off to sleep. She was getting away with it because her victims stayed silent, because fighting back seemed impossible, because the system was designed to protect people like her. But systems could be changed, patterns could be exposed, and predators could be stopped. I just needed to be smarter than everyone who had tried before me. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. First, I called Thomas Reed in Jacksonville. It took some persuasion, but he agreed to meet for coffee. His story confirmed everything Marcus had uncovered. Inappropriate advances, fabricated performance issues, a termination that destroyed his career trajectory. "She ruins lives for sport," Thomas said, stirring his coffee with shaking hands. I tried to fight it, spent 15 grand on lawyers, got nowhere. The company had documentation going back months showing I was a problem employee. All fake, but legally bulletproof. "What if we worked together?" I asked. "Pooled our evidence?" He shook his head immediately. "I signed an NDA as part of my settlement. I can't be involved in anything official. But if someone else happened to discover certain information..." He slid a flash drive across the table. "I can't stop you from finding things on your own." The second call was to Patricia Nguyen. She was more cautious than Thomas but agreed to an anonymous phone conversation. Her experience was identical. Advances, threats, character assassination, career destruction. She's protected, Patricia told me. Board connections, legal resources, and she's smart enough to only target people who can't fight back effectively. What if we could change that equation? How? By making the cost of protecting her higher than the cost of exposing her. The third call was to a journalist named Rebecca Foster, who covered corporate malfeasance for the Charlotte Observer. I had read her investigative pieces on employment discrimination and wage theft. She specialized in stories that embarrassed powerful people. Serial sexual harassment with corporate cover-up, Rebecca said when I outlined the situation. That's exactly the kind of story we're looking for, but I need multiple sources and bulletproof documentation. I can provide both. Anonymous sources won't be enough. I need people willing to go on record. Give me 2 weeks. That afternoon, I started building a coalition. Marcus had identified 8 potential victims across Clarissa's employment history. Some were protected by NDAs, but others weren't. Some were afraid to speak up, but others were angry enough to take the risk. The breakthrough came when I contacted David Brooks, a former Velthorn Global employee who had been terminated 6 months before my arrival. Clarissa had been a manager then, not yet a VP, and she had overplayed her hand with him. I documented everything, David told me during a secure phone call. Recordings, emails, witnesses. I was planning to sue, but my lawyer said the company would drag it out for years and bankrupt me in the process. What if cost wasn't an issue? What do you mean? I'm putting together a group, multiple victims, coordinated response, media attention, the kind of pressure that makes companies cut their losses instead of fighting. David was quiet for a long moment. You really think we can take her down? I think we can make staying quiet more expensive than speaking up. By the end of the week, I had 4 men willing to go on record. Thomas couldn't participate officially, but he provided background documentation. Patricia agreed to serve as an anonymous source. Marcus had uncovered financial irregularities in Clarissa's expense reports that suggested additional ethical violations. Most importantly, I had figured out Clarissa's weakness. She was successful because she operated in shadows, picking off isolated targets who couldn't fight back effectively. But she had never faced coordinated resistance. She had never dealt with victims who refused to stay silent. Rebecca Foster agreed to move forward with the story. Her editor approved a 3-part investigative series that would run over consecutive weeks, building public pressure and making the situation impossible for Velthorn Global to ignore. This is going to get ugly, Rebecca warned me. She'll fight back. Try to destroy your credibility. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my daughter, about the men whose careers Clarissa had destroyed, about the future victims who might be spared if we succeeded. Let her try, I said. I've got nothing left to lose. The Charlotte Observer published the first article on a Tuesday morning. Corporate Predator: How a Rising Executive Used Power to Abuse Employees. Rebecca had done her homework. 4 victims on record, documented evidence spanning 3 companies, financial irregularities, a pattern of corporate complicity. The story went viral by noon. By 2 p.m., Velthorn Global's stock price had dropped 12%. The company's phone lines were jammed with calls from reporters, investors, and advocacy groups. I watched it unfold from my kitchen table, monitoring social media and news feeds. Every share, every comment, every expression of outrage felt like vindication. Wednesday brought the second article. The cover-up: How Companies Enable Workplace Predators. This one focused on Velthorn Global's response to complaints, the fabricated performance reviews, the NDAs, the systematic silencing of victims. Clarissa's LinkedIn profile disappeared Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday, the company had issued a statement placing her on administrative leave pending an investigation. The third article ran Friday. Breaking the Silence: Victims Speak Out About Workplace Harassment. This was the most personal piece, featuring detailed interviews with the men whose careers she had destroyed. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Board meeting called for emergency session this weekend. Sources say termination is a foregone conclusion. Sunday afternoon, Velthorn Global issued a terse press release. Following a comprehensive review, the company has terminated Clarissa Wynn for violations of corporate conduct policies. We are committed to maintaining a safe and professional workplace for all employees. No mention of the victims, no apology, no acknowledgement of systemic failures. But it was enough. Marcus called that evening with additional news. 2 of her former companies just announced they're reviewing old cases. Lawyers are calling it a potential liability nightmare. I poured myself a beer and stepped onto my back porch. The evening air was cool, and Charlotte's skyline twinkled in the distance. For the first time in months, I felt something approaching peace. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Henderson Industries, a logistics company based in Raleigh. They had been following the story and wanted to discuss a senior analyst position. "We need someone with your attention to detail," the hiring manager said. "Someone who understands the importance of documentation and ethical practices." The salary was 40% higher than what I had been making at Velthorn Global. The benefits package included comprehensive legal protection and whistleblower safeguards. I accepted the offer. On my last weekend of unemployment, I drove to Raleigh to pick up Chloe for our monthly father-daughter day. She was waiting on the front porch when I arrived, backpack slung over her shoulder and a gap-toothed grin that made everything worthwhile. "Dad, Mom said you got a new job," she said as we drove toward the park. "Is it a good one?" "Yeah, sweetheart, it's a good one." We spent the afternoon at the Science Museum looking at exhibits about space exploration and dinosaurs. Normal things, simple things, the kind of moments that made fighting worthwhile. That evening I got a text from an unknown number. "Thank you," it read. "You gave me the courage to speak up about my situation. A friend." Over the following months, I heard from 6 other men who had faced similar situations at different companies. Some had decided to file formal complaints. Others had found new jobs where they felt safer. All of them said the news coverage had helped them understand they weren't alone. I kept working, kept documenting, kept building the kind of life that predators couldn't destroy. And every morning when I drove to my new office, I reminded myself that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay silent. Some battles are worth fighting, even when the odds seem impossible. Especially then,